Perfect. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our third webinar in our ADHD webinar series. So today's ADHD webinar is our ADHD career considerations and advice. My name is Blaise Cost. My pronouns are she, her. And I am one of the accessibility advisors representing Uni Access. Our service is the disability support service for students at UWA. Before we get started, I will just do an acknowledgement of country. Perfect. So I'm joining you today from the lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people on the main UWA campus, which is located in Crawley. The Whadjuk Noongar people remain the spiritual and cultural custodians of their land and continue to practice their values, languages, beliefs, and knowledge. So I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I also want to extend this respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. So just before we get started, we'll just go through some housekeeping items. So before we begin, firstly, if you would like to activate captions by clicking on the More Options icon, so the three little dots at the top of your screen, you can then select Turn on Live Captions option. Okay. This webinar is being recorded. The recording will be available in the Microsoft Teams straight after the event and will be on our website in the coming days. Okay. So today our webinar will be presented by the lovely Catherine Lightfoot, who is one of our career advisors from the Careers and Employability team here at UWA. Catherine has over a decade of experience working in the employment sector, which includes tertiary career advice, experience from universities all across UWA, so Notre Dame, ECU, and UWA. She also helped coordinate a project with Autism West, which is called Let's Get Working, and that was in partnership with Curtin University as well. Catherine now specialises in PhD and postgraduate careers, currently working with both domestic and international students. So today, Catherine will talk about career considerations specifically for students with ADHD, transitioning from study into the workforce. Catherine will also be talking about the handy tips and tricks to assist you in your journey into the industry. So I'll now pass you on to Catherine. Thank you, Catherine, for taking the time to speak to our students today.
Thank you so much. Really nice introduction, and I feel very privileged and very grateful to be here. I suppose many people would be thinking, oh, well, what do you know about ADHD? How come you're speaking in here? Look, I'm not diagnosed, but my daughter confirms and assures me that I have got ADHD. I just don't feel the need to have a diagnosis. My daughter has a diagnosis. My son has a diagnosis. My brother has a diagnosis. All three of his children have a diagnosis. My sister has a diagnosis, and her two children have a diagnosis. So I think there's enough supporting evidence to suggest that potentially I also could do with the diagnosis. But I have grown up in a different world, and I grew up in an environment that was very supportive towards creativity and curiosity and to taking risks. And so I suppose that was never really something that I felt was necessary for me to explore. But as years have travelled past me, I have seen many things that I could have done so much better. And if I had understood potentially what my diagnosis or what my ADHD, how it expresses itself, how I use the workarounds, maybe many of the I'm loath to call them glitches, but maybe some of those periods of intense lost may have been a little bit easier. Although as I watch my daughter, my son, my brother, and all of their children, I see them also experiencing a great sense of confusion also. So I sort of feel in many respects, maybe it is just part of the process. I don't know. But what I do know is that curiosity is absolutely vital. I do know that in career development that Carl Jung was very correct, that when he said that I am what I choose to become, he was very much aligned to what career development is. There is so many theories around career development. Career development is not just about how do I write a good resume or how do I actually succeed in an interview. Career development is preparing yourself to arrive at that job interview, to arrive at that desk where you're writing your application with the confidence and the ability to understand what you are doing, why you are doing it, and where you're going to be able to obtain the evidence to prove that you can do it. The research project that I did with, in conjunction with Curtin University, was based on Bandura's theory, which was developed in the 90s, which was around self-efficacy. And that was that if I believe and understand what I do well, then I have the opportunity to be able to expand around that. That it is through my awareness and my understanding of what it is that I do and how I do it and what makes me want to do it, that I can start to explore a range of opportunities around that understanding. So self-efficacy really refers to an individual's belief in his or her capacity to execute behaviours necessary to produce specific performance attainments. So therefore, success can really only lie in a robust belief system in my own efficacy, what it is that I do well. And we know, we have seen through multiple pieces of evidence, that the higher the level of any one person's perception of their own self-efficacy, the wider the range of career opportunities that they will seriously consider, the greater their interest in careers and the better they are to prepare themselves educationally and via experiences for occupational pursuits that they choose in their success. So this is not just for people with neurodiversity or just for people who are neurotypical or just for white folk. This is for everybody. Understanding what it is that I do allows me to access a wider range of opportunities. And we know that it is identified that self-efficacy is directly positively related to a learner's capacity to have curiosity around the opportunities that are available to them. So we do always, with every student that we speak to, anybody that I speak to around careers, no matter what, I always am saying, become very, very flexible in the light of the changing attitudes and the circumstances. Be curious as to how the area that you are interested in is going to change, how it's going to innovate, what will it look like, what will it be like to be an accountant in 5 years' time, what will it be like to be a social worker in 5 years' time, what are the things that we need to actually be thinking about and considering. So we need to take action in the face of uncertain outcomes, and so that we reduce, but we also increase the possibility of chance events. And in this, what we are doing is we're opening our sense of opportunity. We're allowing ourselves to become much more connected to what could be as opposed to what is. So when I think about the career development model, which is a very, very simplistic model, we can see what I'm talking about here. What is this self-efficacy that I'm talking about? I'm talking about understanding what it is that you do, understanding what you value, what are your interests, what are your strengths, and what are your traits, and not to be forgotten, what are your ambitions. Too often what happens is, even at school, got to get focused, got to decide what I'm going to do. Right, go to UWA, that's good, that's where mum and dad want me to go. That's where I arrive. But I haven't taken very much time or consideration around what it is that I want and not what it is that there are opportunities. Where do opportunities lie in the community? So I ask us always to go back to very, very simple model, but I think is very, very helpful and meaningful in understanding what it is. Knowing my values, my interests, my strengths, my traits, and my ambitions. And then exploring, where do these opportunities, where could opportunities start to arise? So Carl Jung's concept of I am what I choose to be is not just I imagine myself now to be a supermodel. Well, how come it's not happening? It's about being able to prepare yourself for these things that you are thinking about. And ambition is so important, because it is in the ambition that I can start to consider and start to think about, where am I trying to take myself? What are the things that I'm trying to achieve? So this is completely the same for any student. Doesn't matter what you are and what stage you are, really. These are the things that we need to think about. We need to understand and express what it is that we do and how we do it. We need to understand where we want to be in 5 years' time or in 10 years' time. Now, I know that that's not easy. I know that it's not easy to have the vaguest idea of where you want to be in 5 or 10 years' time. I also know that it is exhausting even contemplating this, because you change your mind all the time. But what I'm saying in this is to start to think about these things and recognize that you are thinking about these things from a perspective of growth, not of has to. So if my ambition is to do something or to try to achieve something in 10 years' time, not to say to myself, yes, but it's probably not going to happen, because yes, you're right, it probably won't. But it's about thinking about this as a stepping stone potentially to the next thing. And I think that this is extremely important for people who have got ADHD, is this idea of ambitions is so difficult to try to put together. It's so difficult to try to believe that it is possible for you to be able to go out and achieve something in a consistent or in a neuronormal environment. But if you allow yourself the time to play in this space, allow your time to think in this space, and not just randomly, like I did before, I'd like to be a supermodel, which is not what I would really like to be at all. But I actually start to think about this around, what are my strengths, what are my values, what are my traits? And I start to play with this. Then what it allows me to do is it allows me to play a little bit more broadly, a little bit more richly in this explore opportunities. So the articulation of skills, what is really interesting in this is that at least 1/4 of entry-level employers, so that means after you've graduated from university, say that they have difficulty in filling their vacancies because applicants lack employability skills. And what I really think this is not that students or young people lack skills, but rather they lack the ability to articulate what it is that you do. You are unable, predominantly, not always, but often, unable to really break down what it is that you do. And I think for ADHDers, it's really complicated, because in that process of understanding what you do, there is a sense of guilt, there is a sense of failing around the fact that you do things differently. But if I could really empower you just to believe that you actually have got incredible skills, and your task is to explain those to others, not to rely on others to be able to work it out. Because if 1/4 of employers find difficulty in employing people, it is not because people don't have that skill. As I said, it's because people are unable to express it. So you have to understand, how do you do things? How do you get things done? What do you love doing? And why do you love doing that? understand it around your ADHD, understand it around your hyperactivity, around your creativity, around your innovation. Understand it so that you can use the language of your diagnosis to be able to lift you and soar with your abilities. So we know that an employee with ADHD, they are likely to better manage their effect. Oops. I'm sorry, I'm reading this. An employee with ADHD will likely find they are better able to manage the effect of their ADHD on productivity as they learn how their brain works and the impact it has on their efforts. So with this awareness becomes better informed strategies. What I mean here is I know the level of work that I can produce is high. I have a hyperfixation and am able to complete massive amounts of tasks in quite a short period of time. But what comes with that I become exhausted. I have a dropout where I am extremely tired. So I have to explain in my employer that I have a capacity to produce a large amount of work. So I will work longer hours on one day and start later on the other day. It's about understanding what it is that you do so that you can sell your gift, but you can then back it up with what you need as support. And if we don't understand what it is that we need as support, or, which is what happens often, is that we are inconsistent in what it is that we need. We might be getting dopamine fixes in some other place, but we need to be able to start to understand it so that we can actually have a really strong dialogue. We also know that people who have ADHD can laser focus and hone their skills and projects for extended periods of time. So we know this. This is what I know. And once my brain is switched on, I am completely focused, completely connected. But I need to be able to have a level of risk and uncertainty to keep this power going. So I think it's, as I've already said, but I think the biggest skill that you learn that you need to be thinking about as part of your ADHD experience and moving into the workforce is understanding what it is that you need to know, what it is that you do really, really well, and how can that fit within a workplace. We also know that we have a whole pile of really superpowers, and these kind of things really need to be discussed, expanded. We want to be thinking about these different types of things that I've put on here, which is only a few. There are many, many more. But you want to think about then, what are the environments that are going to allow me to actually utilize these? Because it's all very well, isn't it, for me to know what it is that I can do, but it's not necessarily all employers that are going to support me on being able to achieve that. So I really do have to think, going back to that very second slide that I showed you of the career development model, I really do have to think about what it is that the organisation is looking for. We can break organisations up into, traditional, and that they work in a very traditional manner. And those organisations may not be the best organisations for me to work in. I need to think to myself, am I looking at an organisation that allows me to be involved in lots of different things? Is it an organisation which is going to allow me to be innovative, that is interested in my curiosity, is interested in my energy? Or is it an organisation that is steeped powerfully into tradition, and I can't even say tradition, and therefore is going to be putting me at risk of potentially losing my job, becoming bored, becoming disruptive, which ultimately then has a really negative impact on my own personal well-being. So you think to yourself, what is it that I do? What is it that the organisation does, because there has to be a relationship there. And if it takes a little bit longer to find an opportunity or to find the work that you want to do because you need to find the right organisation, allow yourself the privilege to look for that, to be involved in that. I think one of the really great things for ADHD students is to really consider graduate programs. I think graduate programs allow you the opportunity to move through an organisation, to look at many different areas that you could work in within that organisation, and then it allows you to think about it from a bigger picture as opposed to just going into a straight job that's just going to be there and then you're like, well, what's happening now? So really make sure that you do understand what a graduate program is and how to be able to access graduate programs. I think, as many people do as well, is that ADHD is misnamed. I know that it has connotations for unorganised, lazy, disruptive, but there are many who really do challenge this description. And then in actual fact, ADHD is a lust for creativity, for innovation, hyper-focused approach and design. And my experience has been that ADHDers have more thoughts than time, that they are relentlessly innovative, which is one of the reasons for becoming exhausted and potentially for becoming disruptive. And in fact, there is more evidence coming out now that ADHDers have predominantly got the Explore gene 7R variant of DRD4, which is actually around creativity and divergent design thinking. So what is divergent design thinking? Well, divergent design thinking is when you start to think to yourself, oh no, am I sure that this will work? Yes, and you keep going. But as an ADHDer and potentially, and from a big family of ADHDers, I know that there is never, I'm sure it's going to work. There is always, am I sure that this is going to work? Well, maybe not as good as it should be. And so that no or maybe leads to innovation. And this is a really important point, because this innovation will never in a time, really, except for probably the Renaissance periods in the 1800s, has there been a time where so much innovation is occurring, where innovation in the way in which we do everything is happening. And so it is the opportunity to be able to be involved in this divergent thinking and to actually embrace it and love it for what it gives you, this opportunity to think in a slightly different manner. This is a very, very powerful thing and a very, very important thing as we emerge, as we rise through emerging industries, climate recovery, global tensions, and the increase of more multiple global and divergent and inclusive communities. But we do also have to be a little bit convergent as well. We do have to also start to think about how can we put this into something. So if I'm open to all of these different opportunities through my divergent thinking, I do also want to have a little bit of that black where I need to decide what to do. Or alternatively, I can work in a team where I am coming up with ranges and ranges and ranges of possibilities. And then some other people in the team who are convergent thinkers then start to work out what it is that we do. And so this again raises the point about what is it that I do? How can I work? And so for me personally, I know I cannot work alone. I have to work within a team. Otherwise, nothing really happens, because I'm just on this millions and millions and millions of different pathways of exciting ideas, but not really sure how to put them into a process, into a way that would be actually usable. And I really like this slide, because this slide, I think, in many ways, really just shows ADHD, doesn't it, really? You know, I mean, we have got the model. We need to understand who we are. We need to understand where the opportunities lie. We need to make some decisions, and then we transition into it. But actually life happens, and curiosity just keeps driving us further and further away, sometimes from that first ambition that we had. And we're totally flexible to different types of ideas and different types of things that are happening. And John Comboltz, who put together this planned happenstance, he actually is also a career theorist that says, in actual fact, indecision is desirable and ultimately sensible, because it allows the opportunity for job seekers to benefit from unplanned events. So absolutely, we need to understand who we are, and how consistent we are. We need to understand where those opportunities arise. We need to understand what we're really good at, and we need to be able to discuss it with people. We need to be able to express what it means and how it exposes itself in the real world. But we also, at the same time as all of that, we also have to be able to be really, really open to opportunities. And I would always suggest that unless we really understand what it is that we're really good at, these opportunities, whilst they may arise, quite often are not taken advantage of, because we have this self-doubt. We have this self-doubt around our own self-efficacy. So I think that it's never just so simple as to say, understand exactly what it is that you want to do, go after it, and it will be achieved, because we all know that life actually happens. But if I have got this model of what it is that I'm hoping to achieve, what it is that I'm planning to do, then we're much more likely, much more able to take opportunities as they arrive unplanned. So we can actually generate a whole pile of different opportunities through chance. And chance in many respects favours the prepared mind. So what we say in planned happenstance is that in actual fact, what you need to have is you need to have curiosity. You need to have persistence, flexibility, optimism, and risk-taking. And to me, well, they're all the traits, all the beautiful traits that are attached to ADHD. This absolute intense curiosity, the persistence, the flexibility, and ultimately this incredible optimism and the ability to take risks. So what I'm saying here is absolutely, you have to understand what it is that you are doing, where you are going. And I believe that if we don't understand that, then we are really quite unable to take these opportunities that arise. But so often, as an ADHDer, as you bounce from one opportunity to another opportunity to another opportunity, there is a sort of sense of, am I chaotic? Why can't I just have a job that lasts forever? And the reality is you just can't, because there is this incredible wanting to know more, to be innovative more, to be more flexible, to take more opportunities. And as the Foundation of Young Australians put out in 2015 in their really incredible report, which was called The New Mindset of Work, the report said that young people moving into the workforce would potentially have, and wait for it, would have 17 jobs and 5 different careers over their lifetime. And I can't tell you the joy that I felt when I read that, because suddenly my 17 jobs and 3 career changes didn't seem quite that ridiculous. So as we are becoming more aware of how our ADD impacts the way in which we do things, society around us are recognizing that it is this ability to have the flexibility, to have the optimism, to have the persistence. These are becoming incredibly important components of workers. So why is this happening? I mean, why do we say now that young people will potentially have 17 jobs and 5 different careers? Well, the reason is, of course, is that technology is changing so rapidly. So going back to what I said at the beginning, if I can understand or start to think, or I can use my hyperactivity to imagine what an accountant will be doing in 5 years' time, well, then I'm ahead of everyone else, aren't I? I'm starting to prepare for those changes that are coming. I'm starting to become curious about those changes that are coming. And whilst I don't have it in the slide deck today, I would suggest that you take note of a really fantastic website called 100 Jobs of the Future, which will allow you to really, really become curious. And what I love about this slide is that curiosity is associated with higher levels of positive emotions, lower levels of anxiety, and a greater satisfaction with life, and a greater psychological well-being. So curiosity is the compass that leads us to our passions. And if we follow it, well, I don't think that you'll be disappointed to find that the future does belong to the curious. But the reality is that what you hear, that employees with untreated ADHD are at risk of lower income, poorer productivity, higher loss of employment, and more stress induced with illness. These are not fake, these are real things. However, I do believe that I look at those dates, 2006, 2009, 2008, 2006, and that's a very, very long time ago. I do think that in actual fact, as we become more and more aware of what ADHD really is, because let's face it, it isn't actually a disorder, it is just a different way of thinking, a different way of behaving. It is a need for dopamine because we're always looking for it. It is a different way in which our executive function happens within our brain. It can be exhausting. But as we become more empowered around what it is that we do, then I do think that these figures will change. I also wonder, if we have loss of household income, I wonder sometimes, is that necessarily always a bad thing, or is those people just taken time out to do something else? But it is important to recognize that there are issues. It isn't all a joy trip. It is very much difficult. There is definitely stigma attached to it. There is definitely things that happen, such as a social rejection by peers, minimalizing our symptoms, loss of promotions, bullying, and job termination. These are all real. However, I do think, from my experiences, and I do understand that I'm very privileged, but from my experiences, the greater my awareness, the greater my understanding of what it is that I do well, the more I can focus on my capacity to be able to express my excellence, then the better that I am going to become at being able to discuss that with potential employers. And if I go back to Foundation of Young Australians, their new research that they have just released, New Basics, I'm really excited to look at these things and to see that more employers are demanding enterprising skills. The demand for digital skills went up 212% over the last 3 years. Critical thinking increased by 158%. This is enormous. The demands for our thinking. I think we might be ruling the world one day soon, but you know what I mean? Like, we can see that the critical thinking, creativity, presentation are all on the increase. And as I think about these things, then I think how exciting it is from that report that I talked about, how exciting it is to know that if I can express it, if I can understand it, then I'm going to be able to discuss it and potentially create opportunity. Curiosity is so important because it creates wonder and inquisitiveness. Furthermore, it takes the mind to new places, to new unexplored territories. I don't have to explain any of this to any of you. I'm sure you all are absolutely curious. I'm going to ask now that you start to use platforms to increase your curiosity. So absolutely, you need to be able to discuss what it is that you do. And it's not easy. It's tough. It's hard to learn how to do that. And especially when there is so much stigma that is attached to ADHD. But if you can embrace what it is that you do and really start to think about it, about how it is applied to your area of study, how it is applied to your industry of work, then what you can really do is you can really become the forerunners in the innovation and the change. What I ask you to do is to use LinkedIn. I ask you to use LinkedIn not to connect with people or more people such as you would with other social media platforms such as Instagram or as Twitter, but rather that you use LinkedIn at the beginning to become acutely curious around companies. That you go onto LinkedIn and you look at the companies that are on there and you look at what they are posting. You look at what are the jobs that other people who have worked in your field have done, and you look at how often they change and where they change to. You look at that organisation and think to yourself, as to what I said in previous slides, is this organisation an innovative organisation, or is this organisation stemmed in tradition? Because if it's stemmed in tradition, it just may not be the right place for you. Really, really look at the organisations. You'll notice up on this slide there is a little blue sign that says follow. You can click on that and then you are following that organisation. When you follow it, it goes into your network under your pages. So at this point when I did this, it was 176 companies that I was following. I can go and look at all of my companies each week. And then what I can do is I can say NASA has made a post of 16, NASA has made 16 posts this week. I'm going to go and have a look at it and see what they've been talking about. What kind of things are happening in that organisation? I can also go and have a look at who is working in different companies. I can go and have a look and see if I have any first or any second connections. If it is a second connection, what that means is that that person knows somebody that I know. I can go and have a look at that person's pathway. I can have a look at where it is that she worked or he worked, and I can start to maybe map out a process for myself. I can start to ask directions. Now, this is traditional networking. It's a bit boring, right? You know someone, they know someone, they know someone. And so I'm going to get to meet people that they know. That just might not suit me, because when I've done my research, what I've realised is, in actual fact, I have a target. I need to speak to somebody who has done something. And so now what I need to do is work backwards. Who is connected to my target? And how can I get to them? This allows me now to use that mapping that I was using when I was looking at different people and how they got to destinations. It now allows me to actually be the person who is controlling and working out where it is that I want to go to. It then allows me to ask directions. How do I get somewhere? Where do I need to go? Because without this asking of directions, I'm really never going to find a destination, yeah? So what is happening is that through the asking of directions, I have to have had a place that I want to go to. And so it all goes back to that very first diagram, understanding me, understanding where my opportunities are, creating a plan to try to get there, and then asking directions on how to get there. Never have I ever asked a direction and someone's turned around to me and said to me, I'm not telling you. But if I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what I'm good at, I'm unable to articulate how I do it, well, then I'm just standing there lost and have no idea and think that I haven't got any opportunities. So, bias to action, and I'd say takeaways. I'm sorry that this slide's actually a little bit distorted, but anyway. Everybody needs to understand how they work, what they're good at, and where it is needed. Everybody. And ADHDers are not excluded from that. But ADHDers are actually in a really incredible position where you have incredible skills that are not expressed and not articulated. And you have the opportunity to really build into that and to understand how you can make it work and how you can sell this and discuss this with others. Each person is different, and you must understand how to articulate what you do in the framework of the needs of the industry. So I have to understand the industry that I want to work in. And you know, it's not just with ADDs or ADHDs that I get the question. I'm in my final year of a commerce degree, majoring in marketing. What jobs do you think I can have? No idea. I have no idea. That is your responsibility to understand the framework of your industry. Barriers are real. They are. Not going to pretend that at all. But there is always workarounds. Work is changing, and for us, that is great news. Use your curiosity to your advantage and ask for directions. The Career Centre is based over in the Student Central. We have a platform, uwacareerhub.com.au. We have a Careers and Employability Award, which is a fantastic award for everybody to develop their understanding of their skills and how to articulate them, to have that reflection. We also have in the award employer awareness as well, which really does support you. We have the Steps to Success, which is now called Profiling for Success, but it is a software which allows you to do personality testing. Not that I think personality testing is a great way to be able to plan your career, but certainly is a great way to be able to help you to learn how to articulate it. We also have events ongoing. And I would encourage you to have a look at the different events that we have available. Okay, any questions? I did forget to say that if you had questions to put them into the chat, but so I hope that we have been getting some questions, and if so, yeah, that would be great.
Perfect. So if anyone has any questions, please type it in the chat. Catherine still has a few minutes so she can answer any questions that anyone might have.
And if no questions are coming up, then I'll be really surprised.
We have one person saying thank you very much. But I think, yeah, so Catherine, thank you so much for sharing your insight. That was really great. I really did like the thing that you said about articulating your skills and also articulating, you know, how we function and why we function and what supports we might need in the workplace. I think that's so important. So Elise also has posted some resources in the chat if anyone would like to access those. But if no one has any questions, I might let Catherine. Oh, there is a question. Any advice for advocating for yourself? If you are already in a job and need to explain ADHD to your boss.
Oh, look, what a fantastic question. I was sort of hoping to get one of these questions. It's a 45-minute answer, isn't it? I think it is really complicated and very, very difficult. And I've experienced this many times with my children and my brother as well. It goes back to considering your workplace. Is your workplace open to respecting what it is that you provide? I think that having this conversation is extremely difficult and also puts you into a very, very vulnerable place. So I believe that it has to be done with lots of support from people around you and potentially your colleagues. I think it's really important to do an audit of what it is that you do and how you do it, and then to focus on all the things that you bring, all the brilliance that you bring to your role, with backup then of how you would need to have support. So rather than going in and saying, these are the things that I need support for, I think it's important to step away from it, look at what it is that you bring to the role, what it is that is uniquely yours, and then after that, put what you need in support to be able to bring and to produce what it is that you produce.
Perfect. Catherine, there was another question. Someone asked whether to disclose or not to disclose.
Oh, and this is again, the 101 question, isn't it? Like, do you or don't you? I think that the reason, look, my daughter has a graduate program. She did not disclose. She didn't feel that she needed to disclose, which is why I talk about the graduate program, because her rotation was quite rapid, moving from one different area to another area. But she has been thinking about it over the last 6 months while she's been doing this for her next role, and she's decided that she will disclose upon accepting of the acceptance of the position, but not before the position has been offered to her. So that's her decision. I think individually, each one of you have to really think about this and think about how does it impact the way in which you work. Do you need the support because of your exhaustion? Do you need the support because of your auditory comprehension? What kind of support do you need? Then think about that separate to the role. Think about what workarounds have I got for that, and if you feel that it will enhance your capacity to produce at work, then yes, definitely disclose. But look, I mean, it might be my age, it might be something else, I'm not sure, but my feeling is at this point, ADHD is still expanding in our understanding and our awareness. We know that there's probably 5 to 8% of the population that have that would be receiving a diagnosis. I would say that we will find that it will be many more than that as we move forward. So I think the last sort of 4 or 5 years have been real trailblazing for ADHDers in the workforce who have started to expose themselves. I think if you're going to disclose, you need to have the support systems around you as you do, because you will feel very, very vulnerable.
One last question, Catherine. Someone's asking, how do you combat rejection when applying for jobs, especially if you're, sensitive to, I guess, that rejection? Maybe someone who's new to the workforce or just recently graduated can be hard to manage.
Oh, and this is a classic ADHD question. The rejection is complex. It's that dopamine, isn't it? It's sort of like a rejection just zaps it all out of you. My advice is rejection is part of the process. It generally takes at least 3 months to be able to secure a job when you first start looking. You will have friends who just get one straight out, and that's great. That's happenstance. That's, just crazy luck applies. I think this is the way I do it. If you are getting an interview, if you're getting interviews and you're not actually winning the interviews, then something's happening in the interview process. So you need to come and speak to the careers team and have a conversation with them about what your interview process looks like. If you are not even getting